So it's a great pleasure being here today. We were told that we should try a new format, or we decided to try a new format. So there's not a moderator, but we ask each other some questions and chat about AI with a focus on HR. And maybe Terence, you want to tell a little bit about what are you doing? What is your company doing apart from that it does something with
Sure.
AI? You want to do a little bit more?
So our company is called MoBerries.com, and we are Germany's largest shared talent pool. What we did in terms of technology, we built an automated candidate quality filter, which picks out candidates which are active looking for jobs, and we get our candidates directly from talent pools from companies. So imagine big companies get 250 applicants per job, they hire only one and reject the rest. And our algorithm actually learns why HR managers reject candidates. And now the algorithm generates about 30,000 matches per month, from which 30% are accepted, and that's a pure neural network. So we have a lot of labeled data, and now we're growing this internationally with getting about 50,000 applicants per week. So it's quite exciting, a lot of data, and that's what we do in terms of HR. So Michael, what is I2X? How did you get into AI?
Yeah, so actually, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Many years ago, 12 years ago, I had the pleasure to be one of the 3 people who built StudiVZ, a large social networking site, then built a large e-commerce network that kind of was active with daily deal websites. We built that into the largest competitor of Groupon. Now a lot of my friends ask me, why on earth are you building software for call centers? What's wrong with you? But there's a good reason for it. I think it's a great thing to do. And when I was doing Rebate Network, my last company, we had 10,000 people in 30 countries, 2,500 of them telesales agents and customer support agents. And they drove me totally crazy because they were doing everything but what I wanted them to do. And I couldn't find a good solution to that. And I figured that actually most of the people, managers, employees, entrepreneurs, have somewhat issues that their company is not correctly represented, that the people that has customer contact on the phone is not working the way it should do. So I thought it would be great to build a company around it and build an augmenting software. So that's how I got into it. But Terence, I have another question for you that probably nearly everybody's interested in. What do we have to do to find great co-workers, employees? Where do we find them? What's best practices? How has this changed? I mean, HR, finding people, recruiting people is the major topic. What's your experience? What would you recommend us? What do you see?
So it's very important to differentiate per job category, because finding a marketing manager is easier than finding an AI specialist. And to also, the location matters a lot. If you're in Berlin, for example, it's easier to find people, but also people switch their jobs more often. And if it gets more niche, so the more specialized the candidates are, then the only way to find them is actually writing them and convincing them with your product and your technology. So some of the good channels are also like AngelList, and you get great applicants in the AI space or from machine learning experts if you sell your brand very well.
So you recommend me that I'm on the email and writing every 5 hours per day, writing people?
The best channels are still LinkedIn, Xing, and outbound, so contacting people directly, or having a great brand. So you're building out your brand, everybody knows about I2X, and then people come to you and apply to you. Also, if you have specialists in your team. So if you have a very, very experienced and well-known AI specialist, which a lot of developers know, then developers follow those guys automatically. So let's say you hire a new CTO, which is well-known and worked at Google before, or Yandex, or any other big companies, then it's easier to attract talent to join these teams as well. I think you have experience with your tech team, or how do you attract?
Before I want, so this is like building a brand and having great people and writing people, but what does this have to do with AI? So what do you see with people? What kind of new tools can you apply?
So one big problem is if you post a job on Stepstone or any other big job platform, you get a lot of applicants, but a lot of irrelevant applicants as well. And then you spend a lot of time screening those profiles and contacting the people, not many writing back. And at the end, you spend €1,000 for a job post, you got 40 applicants, one is relevant, but he doesn't reply to your email. So this is an issue. You still didn't fulfill the position. And what does it have to do with AI? Or maybe let's go back, this pre-evaluation or pre-selection of profiles. This technology has been existing since over 5 years. So you have categories which are in the CV, you have categories which are on the job description, and you try to match this. This is not really AI, that's not even machine learning, that's just text matching. And this technology has been existing, but still up till today, you have to manually screen CVs, which is very annoying and time consuming and also cost expensive. And this process can be automated and is right now in the process of automation. So all applicant tracking systems already have pre-filters where they show you relevant applications. And the same is for candidates. So for example, how we call it to candidates, we always say we are the Jerry Maguire for the candidates. If you look for a job, we are your sports manager. So by evaluating what a candidate is looking for, and also by using the feedback of candidates, you can give targeted job adverts to those candidates, and it's also very important to look at the activity of both sides. So if an HR manager reviews a profile 3 weeks after, the candidate might already have found a job. And speed is one very important factor. Always contact people fast if you want to hire them fast. And also be aware that you're not the only one who's speaking with top-notch talent. But I believe, and I know that because we see it from our technology, that within the next 2 years, this first round interviews will be fully automated. So a system will tell you which candidates you should interview. And then the next step, which is going to come in, is those first round interviews. So let's make an example for blue-collar jobs. Let's say you're hiring a truck driver. And all you need to know is, do you have a license? Which language do you speak? And how long have you been driving a truck? And then you can pre-select irrelevant applicants without needing to interview them. So we also use Messenger bot as one example doing those interviews. And that is the phase which is coming in now, that you see also video tools which analyzes candidates and then gives further data to do the pre-evaluation easier. So first round interviews and the pre-selection of candidates will be automated, which makes AI interesting. And also looking at internal structures, all the administrative stuff is already mostly automated. So you had a lot of new applicant tracking systems coming into the markets, and there's no need for HR managers anymore for doing administrative stuff because tools are already automating this. And this is one thing what we see in HR already, that some parts of the jobs are dying because it's being automated.
And this is very interesting. 2 questions. You said you're having interviews on a messenger chat, or how many interactions did you have so far? Like, I don't know, are there a lot of people? Is it 10, 20, 100,000?
So monthly we have about 1.2 million job seekers worldwide. And it's with, so we always focus on making it sticky.
And there are 1.2 million people on this messenger?
Yes, yes.
And then
job
interacting?
Worldwide, and they just look for a job. They say, then we ask them, where do we look for a job? Then they get to type in the category, and then we already ask them a couple of questions for those certain roles of jobs in order to select out the irrelevant ones. A lot of times when you get an application, you don't invite the applicant right away. You ask a couple of extra questions. And this is repeating tasks which can be automated already. Again, this is not AI yet, but this is an automated or a technology which helps a lot of automation process saving time.
And how do you get the last question? And then, but it's just interesting. How do you get the feedback from the company? Because theoretically, yes, it's even as a member of a company, I would like to have the aggregated, collective, structured feedback of everybody on candidates and then improve on that. But how do you make this?
So most of the companies already use HR systems. So they have an applicant tracking system, and we integrate directly into those applicant tracking systems, and we take the feedback from the ATS systems directly. So if HR manager make comments about candidates, we take this feedback, We label this feedback in order to match it with our database, and that helps us doing the pre-selection a lot. So let's say a candidate has been rejected 5 times for the reason that he doesn't speak C1 English, he only speaks B2 English, then the system automatically takes that feedback and is not recommending jobs to that candidate anymore, which requires C1 German or English, as an example. So maybe going back, you have a deep tech also within I2X to automate call centers. Don't you have huge competition of big companies already in that space? And why do you think, how can you beat that, and how can you attract talent?
Maybe we don't want to automize call centers. I'm actually a very big believer into human augmentation for quite some time. So our aim is to listen to calls, analyze them in real time, and then give real-time feedback to the agents what they can do better. So what should they say, how should they say it, when should they say it? Because one of the problems is that theoretically a company has a lot of information, and you know what works, how should a good customer call be like, but then if you have hundreds or if you have thousands, in some cases even tens of thousands of agents, it's a huge challenge. Plus, especially in Germany and Europe at this luckily prospering job market, you don't find people, but you have high churn. So some call centers have, like if they're really good, 20%, sometimes up to 80% annual churn. How do you educate them? And what machines are really good at, analyzing a lot of data, and then, for example, pulling certain information up. Where humans are good at interpreting them, and then saying, okay, is this relevant? And maybe information we show in 60, 70% of the cases is very relevant, so that somebody can use it. In 30, 40%, it's not relevant, so he can't use it. And that way, you actually get a very good experience, and you make somebody who is medium qualified, maybe to very qualified, or somebody who's low qualified, a little bit more qualified. And I think you really see this AI for me now, it's actually less a threat to kind of automize and replace jobs, but more, it's like a job promotion for everybody. And you can look this into several areas. Another area which is great is this, we don't have anything to do with it, but is with augmented reality. For example, there's a huge shortage of mechanics, of electro engineers, etc. If you have a solar panel and it's broken, maybe a specialist from somewhere needs to come, or if you have a ship engine, it's broken. What you now can do, you have a glass, and then the senior engineer from the company can steer somebody who is just is hopefully a little bit gifted, but doesn't have specific knowledge of this topic, on what he should do. And he tells him, press this button, cut this cable, plug that cable in here, and suddenly somebody who has no clue about a ship engine or a solar panel, because he is steered from somebody remote, becomes an expert in that. Which is great for the companies because it's a lot more scalable, and you don't need to send your senior Siemens engineer to a power plant in Colombia to fix it, so he's gone for a week. But he's just gone, or he's on his computer for half an hour or an hour. And on the other side, somebody who couldn't perform this task suddenly does something very complicated. and this you can go through several areas. So that's what, in the core, what we do, and why it's what we do. We take a lot of data, analyze it, and then try to figure commonalities and suggestions. And why, also another question is, speech is obviously, is discussed a lot, so why should we do this better than a lot of other companies? I think, what we do something very special for a certain group of people and a certain type of calls, and we have amazing people that do nothing else than that. And if you take, for example, a Google or an Apple, they do speech for everything and anything. And if you look at the team there that might work on special call centers, it's also not gigantic. It's like maybe 5, 10, 20 people. And in general, I don't really, over my career, I don't fear the large companies. But I'm always paranoid about another small startup somewhere, maybe in Berlin in a garage or somewhere in the US. And that's where I'm a lot more careful about what other startups do than the large corporates. And also by now, I mean, you can partner with them. You can, that's I think quite good. And then definitely the last question was about like where to get people from. It's the core topic. I've learned what you just mentioned, writing personally. It's what I've heard many times. I've just had a board meeting a few days ago, and they also told me, Michael, you should probably spend half of your time speaking with people and writing personal messages to people you think it's like it should be your main task, which is interesting that you always think like if you do a startup or something, you should, I don't know, sell or manage or a product or whatever. They say no, HR, minimum 50% of your time. And I think this is now true for a lot of functions, a lot of things. It's just becoming so crucial. And then obviously the other thing you also mentioned, automizing, it's a huge discussion we're having. How much can you automate at the beginning? If you really have very talented, very senior people, for example, we have a huge discussion, should we force them to do a test? We have for our senior engineers, we have a very complicated test, so we know when somebody passes it, he's really good. Problem is, if somebody's really good, he maybe doesn't want to do this and even doesn't have to do it. So sometimes we do it, maybe sometimes not. It's a discussion that's ongoing. So how much can you automate? If you have also somebody very good, do you want to have him like do an interview on a chat message? Or so we're trying a little bit more, depending on the position and the person, an individualized approach.
Do you have your in-house tech team or outsourced tech team?
No, only in-house. We only with in-house everybody in Berlin. 30 people currently, 4 of that HR. We put great emphasis on that, relocate from higher globally, relocating people here to Berlin.
And do you also see that problem that employees keep switching their jobs quite often, also in the tech team?
I mean, definitely any good employee in Berlin in tech probably gets a job offer nearly on a daily basis. If he doesn't get that, you have the wrong people. So it's obviously a huge challenge to keep them, to retain them, to make them happy. I think if you provide, and the key is, do they have an interesting task, an interesting vision? And second one, do they have really inspiring and intelligent coworkers? I think these are the two most important things. If you provide that, probability that they will stay and work with you is big. And then just naturally you lose some, but it's definitely a very challenging environment.
So maybe to add a little bit of statistics behind that, 60% of the workforce is already millennials, and they keep switching their jobs in general every 2 to 3 years. And where this is going is towards freelance work. So if you specialize in a topic, you know you're really good at that, and there's less other people who can do the same. You keep working for several companies. So freelance work is more attractive for you than just staying in the company. Do you already have freelancers as well, or only full-time employees or advisors for certain?
Very few. We no freelancers in tech, but in let's say non-core technology functions. Yes. I've one other questions for you. Where do you see the jobs of the future? You said that some jobs are automized, but I don't have the feeling that even in HR, I don't have the feeling that we have less people working in HR. And in general, so where do you see jobs in the future? And do you see less or more jobs?
What's interesting is that 65% of the jobs which will exist after 2025 don't even exist yet. And we don't even know the job titles of those jobs. And what's interesting, I don't know what that is, but I can guess what it is because I can look what are the trends coming up in the next 5 years also in terms of technology. So for example, IoT or AI. And within those developments, there's new jobs being created. For example, in AI, you need a lot of structured data. So you need big teams labeling your data, or you get labeled data. So you need large QA teams. Do you have a labeling team as well?
Yes.
Or? So those are roles which they have not been existing 5 years ago. And how it's changing right now, it's so fast that you can predict the industries which are coming up, and then certain job roles within that industries. There's one big problem though. that if you look at the big corporates right now, as well as we heard that there's banks merging in Germany, they will lay off a lot of people which are in a segment that what they learned in school, what their education is actually not needed. There's a lot of jobs dying here. What the problem is, and that's, I would say, for the whole AI development, people above the age of 50, when they lose their job, if they don't get new education, then they have no chance of finding new jobs. So everything is great in terms of automation, new technologies coming and new certain jobs, but the key is also education. How do you educate people, and how do you, because it's maybe not enough that you go to school only once. After 10 years, you have to go to school again because you have to learn new stuff. And this is something really interesting and also very challenging coming up already, and especially in the next 2 years, this will be more and more important.
Great. So we were given the sign that time is over. Thank you very much. At least it was fun for me. I learned something. Thanks a lot for listening.
Cool.
And yeah.
Thank you.
Terence.
Thank you.
Thank you.